Hello and welcome to Written Words. I'm Helen and today we're going to explore the humble question mark. And we're going to ask ourselves a question. When is a question not a question? And by that I mean, when does a question need a question mark? And when doesn't it need a question mark? The use of question marks seems on the face of it to be quite straightforward. If it's a question, it needs a question mark. And that is technically true, but what constitutes a question? So let's have a closer look. A question mark is needed when the question is a direct question. And a direct question is when you are quoting word for word a question that somebody asks. Very often those kinds of questions will include a question word, which is often a good clue that a question is coming up. So words like how, when, where, who, why are indicators that it is a question, although not always, so do be careful. So for example, where are my keys? Is a direct question. You are directly quoting somebody who is asking where their keys are. Another example, how did you do that? Is a question. You're directly quoting somebody asking something. And in both those cases, we have question words. We have where and how. Another way that questions can be formed without need for a question word is to invert the word order. So we could have a sentence that says something like, he is going on holiday next week. That is not a question, it's just a statement. It's telling us what this person is going to do. But if we change the word order and we swap round he and is, so we get is he, it suddenly becomes a question. Is he going on holiday next week? There are other ways to form questions too. Sometimes we can change a statement such as, you know where she lives. That's not a question. But if we add do at the front, do you know where she lives? It becomes a question. And then we have little phrases like, isn't it? Doesn't she? And so on, that we stick on the end of a statement. So you know where she lives can become, do you know where she lives? Or it can be, you know where she lives, don't you? The statement, it is going to be hot today, can become a question by turning it and is the other way round. Is it going to be hot today? Or we can make it into a question by adding isn't it at the end. It is going to be hot today, isn't it? So here's a little puzzle for you. Is this a question or a statement? If I say it's raining, it's clearly a statement. But if I put a question mark on the end of it and I alter the way I say it, it's raining? Suddenly it becomes a question. We can make a question out of a statement simply by adding a question mark and raising our voices at the end of the phrase. And this is usually a way of expressing some kind of surprise. If you hadn't thought it was raining and then you suddenly realise it is. It's raining? For example, in this little exchange, I don't want to go outside because it's raining. It's raining? Let's have a look at another example. He isn't here. It's a statement if it doesn't have a question mark. But if you put a question mark on the end of it, he isn't here? Somebody's asking a question in surprise, as if they were expecting whoever he is to be here. For example, in this conversation, have you heard anything from Dave? He said he would come at 6, but he isn't here yet. He isn't here? So all of those are direct questions. All of those are questions that somebody might ask and you might wish to quote in your writing. However, Indirect questions do not need a question mark. And an indirect question is where you add a little bit of information or an explanation, or you put the question into some kind of context. So you might be kind of quoting somebody's question, but with a little extra padding added to it to make it indirect. So let's have a look at some examples. Is he going on holiday next week? Is a direct question. We've already looked at that one. But if I were to say, I wonder if he's going on holiday next week, that is an indirect question. So we've added a little bit more padding, a little bit more distance to it, and it's no longer direct. Where are my keys? Is a direct question. We've looked at that one already. But if I were to say, he asked where his keys were, that's no longer direct. It's indirect. We've added a little explanation that he asked where his keys were. And a little extra clue to help you decide whether something is a direct or an indirect question is the way you would say it. You would say a direct question usually by raising your voice at the end, whereas with an indirect question, your voice is more likely to go down at the end. So, where are my keys? And he asked where his keys were. Can you hear the difference at the end of the sentence? Is he going on holiday next week? I wonder if he's going on holiday next week. In the direct question, the tone goes up at the end. In the indirect question, the tone goes down at the end. Why not have a go at reading those sentences aloud yourself and see if you can hear the way your voice changes as you read each one? And there's one more instance which has been known to confuse writers as to whether or not they should use a question mark, and that is with the words perhaps or maybe, because it does feel a bit like a question, and sometimes when you say phrases with perhaps or maybe, you do raise your voice a little at the end. But they don't need a question mark because they are really statements rather than questions. So if I were to say, does Sue know where his keys are? That is a question. But if I were to say, perhaps Sue knows where his keys are, this time we don't need a question mark because it's just a statement. Will I like the film? Is a question, and my voice went up at the end as I said it. But maybe I will like the film is a statement. It's not a very definite statement, it's very vague because we don't know what the outcome will be, but it is nevertheless a statement and not a question, so it doesn't need a question mark. So to finish off, I've got a little bit of dialogue for you to have a look at, which contains no question marks. So can you work out where the question marks should go? Who was the man you were talking to on the bus? He lives next door to my mum. Do you know his name? It might be Jim, but I'm not sure. Perhaps I'll ask my mum. I was wondering if he knows my brother. What makes you think that? He mentioned the company where my brother works. Maybe they know each other. So where do you think the question marks should go in this conversation? Let's have a look at the answers. Who was the man you were talking to on the bus? Question mark. It's a direct question. He lives next door to my mum. Do you know his name? Question mark. It's a direct question. It might be Jim, but I'm not sure. Perhaps I'll ask my mum. No question mark required there, it's just a statement. I was wondering if he knows my brother. No question mark required there because it's an indirect question. What makes you think that? We have a question word. The phrase went up at the end of the line. It's definitely a direct question, so it needs a question mark. He mentioned the company where my brother works. Maybe they know each other. No question mark required. It's a statement. It's a vague statement, but it's not a direct question. So how did you get on? Did you get all the right answers? or were there some you weren't sure about? So next time you're reading, especially if it's a piece of dialogue, have a look at where the question marks are. Hopefully, if it's a well-edited book, the question marks will be in the correct places. And maybe sometime when you're out and about, maybe you're in a cafe or on the bus or the train, tune into little snippets of conversations. And if you hear statements and questions that sound like direct and indirect questions, ask yourself, if I were to write this down, where would I put the question marks? So if you had any doubt about where question marks should and shouldn't go, I hope this has cleared things up. And if you thought you knew where they should go, I hope that I proved you right. I have several more videos in the pipeline at the moment, some language, some literature, and I've got a rather special seasonal project coming up in the next couple of weeks too. So thank you very much for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and in the meantime, happy reading and happy writing.